Emmy, I think we should probably kick off.
Perfect. Yeah, hopefully more people would be joining very soon. So good afternoon, everybody. For those who don't know me, my name is Emmy. I am the director of events for Outvertising. This is my day job, and I also work at Mindshare as business director in the global team. Today, this event is very important for the LGBT community because we are driving awareness of a coming out date. Coming out date is an important day within the community that is celebrated every year on the 11th of October. We work in an industry that is fueled by creativity, expression, and culture. You will think that the marketing and advertising industry drive and advocate diversity inside the walls of organizations that we work for, but also across the individuals who are behind creating the work that we see on the ads that brands spend millions of dollars and pounds every year. Our industry has made really good progress in recent years. Unfortunately, the issue is prevalent, as we feel like people within the community still don't feel safe in the workplace. And that obviously has an impact on the work of those minds who are behind producing creative work and media, not being able to show the true colors in the workplace. The representation of the LGBT people in media, as we know, even though we have moved forward quite a lot, and every single day we have more people wanting to drive the change, is still a bit misleading. And we feel that one of the reasons why this is happening is because those people creating the ads are not being able to express themselves at work. So part of the problem that we have is the representation of the LGBT community in advertising, but we can sort that out by creating safe workplaces for people working in our industry. Just to put things a little bit into perspective, I want to share some of the stats that we have put together across different reports in recent months. Approximately 39% of new graduates getting into our industry are getting back into a closet in their first job, either in a media agency, creative agency, client side, or publisher. And when we put this 39% into a perspective of the around 56% of young people age 18 to 24 do not identify as heterosexual, we are talking about a huge number of population who are actually not being able to express themselves at work. 35% of lesbians are not out to their employees. 19% of gay men are not out to their employees. 58% of LGBTQ people aged 18 to 24 have actually decided to not talk about their sexual orientation at work because they are afraid of discrimination and have an impact on their career development. And when we look into the bigger picture of how is that impacting advertising, 40% of people in the general population feel that advertising does not accurately represent the LGBT people or people with different gender identities in advertising. As we can see, the challenge is there, and the choice of coming out of the closet or not is personal. Each person has their own individual rights and beliefs to do so, but we can all build a safe place for people in the community and translate that into our modern society. This roundtable today is bringing together LGBT industry leaders as well as analysts, and we're going to be having a discussion around our own coming out experiences and how we are supporting the places that we work for to create better and more diverse workplaces. We recently launched in advertising the Mentor and Mentee program to support young talent in the industry. So if there is young people in the audience today, I want to invite you to reach out if you are experiencing any challenges at work, if you want to talk with someone, or simply if you need guidance to be able to progress your career in the right direction. You can reach out to Jonathan Palmer or Alex Barber or even myself, and we can point you in the right direction. Hope you enjoyed the discussion today. And we have a beautiful panel of people joining us today. We have Sarah Donovan, we have Martin Davis, me, Betty, and myself. So I'm going to start with sharing my experience. So as probably a couple of you, for those who know me, I am originally from Colombia. I've been living in the UK for 10 years now. My coming out experience, so when I was living back in Colombia, I was a completely different person. Because back then I wasn't able to be openly gay at work, even though I have always tried to embrace my personality and my character. But even though people knew I was gay, I wasn't able to actually stand out and put my stamp to actually feel and feel confident to actually express myself. So I've been working in the industry for a long time. So I started working even before finishing uni. And I always was in my little cocoon, having a lot of limitations. On the brighter side, because I knew that that was a challenge I was saying, I was kind of coping with that by finding a place to have that conversation about my identity with my close friends. And I didn't really come out until I was in uni in later years. And it was a bit painful to come out to my friends and also to my family, because I grew up in a society that is completely different to a British society. And back then, being gay was very stereotypical. That meant that you were not being able to have a professional job, and lots of people were thinking like a gay man is going to be the hairdresser, or you might want to be ending up becoming transgender. So people really was getting all the different shades around what being gay or LGBT means. So that was my story. When I decided to move to the UK, that was for me a huge eye-opener. And it was actually feeling, I always say to people that this is my Alice in Wonderland experience, because when I landed here, I actually find it was like going into a transformation. When you walk into a tunnel, you are one person, and when you walk out to the other side and you see a light, you are a completely different person. And that was because the society where I was living now was embracing, and I was feeling like there was an opportunity for me to express myself. And the different places where I was working on, I was seeing role models. I was seeing people who were actually empowering themselves. And it was like, in the UK, there is no reason for me to not being able to be who I'm really am. My transition since I've been working in the UK is being great, because I think a lot of the times we take this for granted, because we live in a society that is giving us everything. But when you come from a different world and you actually realize all the beautiful things and opportunities that the UK offers to people, not just related to gender, but for different backgrounds, different religions, is pretty amazing. And my invitation is for us to actually get to reflect a little bit into that and put ourselves in the shoes of other people like me, who are coming from different cultural backgrounds, to really understand the limitation that we were having in our previous lives, to actually make our lives for better. Part of my contribution has come from a different background, is trying to build better and more diverse workplaces. And that is basically what I kind of have made myself like a mission statement. So I'm always, for every single agency I have a step in. I always want to collaborate with LGBT Pride Network. I've been working contributing with advertising for a few years now, because I feel that when we get together and we can do much better, and we can support our friends. So yeah, that is my story about me coming out.
Thanks, Amy. I think it's really important to realise that, you know, as bad as we kind of like are trying to say things are here, you know, there are places that are a lot worse. So it's really interesting to have a viewpoint of somebody that's come from somewhere from a background where it is completely not acceptable, to showcase the fact that we do have good things here in the UK, and especially here in London. So it's really good to hear that perspective. And everyone's coming out experience is very different. So Martin, it'd be really interesting to hear from you, from somebody growing up here, your experiences.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's a very different experience, but in some ways very similar. I feel like, you know, Emmy talked about that transformational experience from going from one country to another. And for me, that was at school. I didn't know anybody that was gay. I felt really alone, confused in it, because I grew up under Section 28. So nobody talked about it. Teachers couldn't speak to you about it. And so it was very kind of confusing and felt unsafe, and I was very hyper vigilant about modifying my behavior, being very aware of how people were perceiving me. That was sort of my experience, my closeted experience, if you like, at school, confused and feeling unsafe. And for me, I didn't do very well at school. I passed my GCSEs, but I didn't thrive. I left my A-levels and just felt like I couldn't be myself. And so I went to college at 18, and that was when, you know, I thrived at college. I was just a completely different person. I reinvented myself. Like Emmy said, I was gay from the off. I was very kind of open about it, very surprised about people being so positive about it. I've never actually experienced a negative reaction from anybody, which was completely counter to how I felt I was gonna, what I was worried about experiencing. So for me, that was when I kind of was out. And then at the same time, I was in a few jobs before where, you know, like small jobs like at McDonald's and as a porter and things like that, and I was never open. But then I went and worked at Lush Cosmetics, and I think you'll stumble over gay people constantly. You know, they're very embracing of kind of different identities and your kind of your own kind of self-expression and queerness. And I was there for 3 years. And now looking back, I feel like that was really formative in kind of, it didn't allow me to ever even consider the possibility of going back into the closet, if you like, when I went into more kind of less kind of socially free organizations. And what I was really kind of strong and confident in those places. And like Emmy was saying as well, almost took it as a personal mission to be 100% myself in those places, and like overtly so, to kind of say that this is, you know, I'm not, it was such a reaction against, there's no way that I'm going to be put back in the closet with your microaggressions. It was completely the other way. So I think Lush Cosmetics had a lot to do with kind of how I am now even. So yeah, that's my coming out experience in a bit of a nutshell.
Thanks for that. And go on to you, Lee. Have you got the same kind of experiences, or has your experience been slightly different, do you think?
Yeah, I think there's definitely lots of similarities, but a few things that are different. I mean, I didn't know that I was gay at school. I mean, obviously now when I look back, you know, lots of things make a huge amount of sense. But all the way through those years, I had no idea, I think, until I was about 17 and watching Bad Girls. And if there's any other lesbians in this call, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So the Helen and Nikki storyline has got a lot to answer for. So by the time I finished uni, so went all the way through, so that happened when I was about 17, but I went all the way through uni, still not coming out, and just sort of gradually thinking perhaps I was gay. And it wasn't until I actually started in my first job when I was 20 that I came out. And, you know, I had a huge amount of privilege, luck, whatever way you want to talk about it, and that anyone that I came out to, friends, family, were absolutely supportive and fine about it. I mean, my mum said, you know, when I was 10, I carried about a ring binder full of Kylie Minogue pictures for about 3 years. So to be honest, she was like, I think I already knew this was coming. So all of that absolutely fine, and you know, no terrible experience there. And even in my first job, my boss's brother was actually gay, and again, they were hugely supportive, and, you know, and I felt comfortable in that office. However, at that point, I felt like I'd come out, felt quite good about it, everything was good. But once I started going out to meetings and meeting people out with that workplace, going to client meetings, just the day-to-day thing, I then found it really difficult. And what I found, that I was sort of in this weird hybrid, 1 foot in, 1 foot out the closet. So I would go to, I think one of the early things that happened was I went to a client meeting, and it was about a restaurant trying to promote itself a bit more to the pink pound, as they called it. And within that meeting, the client actually said, but we only want the boy gays, not the girl gays, because they're also ugly. was the exact and that. So you imagine being sort of 21 in a client meeting, sitting, and it was just like, and and no one else in that meeting was supportive of that, but that kind of thing actually happened quite a lot. Like at that point in those days, people would outwardly say really homophobic things, and it was just not, and no one said anything because everyone was just uncomfortable, and no one would challenge it in those days. There's zero chance. Well, I think other people might have other experiences, but I cannot imagine sitting in a meeting now and that would have been said to someone and nobody would have stood up and said anything about it. But anyway, I didn't say anything either, and from all of that time, if I was out of things, I never allowed myself to sort of get to know clients in more of a personal level, like through all those early years, because then I would have to talk about personal things. I didn't want to do it. And also just even stupid things. I said this, if I was in a taxi and they assumed I had a boyfriend, which would happen all the time, the assumption would always be that I was straight, then I would never correct it. And I think I spent a lot of time telling myself that I didn't correct any of those things or stand up against outrageous homophobia or very low level homophobia, because I didn't want to make other people feel uncomfortable. But actually that is not really the case at all. Like, it was actually that I felt uncomfortable about it. There's a tremendous sense of sort of strange like shame that comes like in those early years. I think when you're like gay, that you sort of still can't, like, you can't even fully understand yourself, so you just you tell yourself it's for other people. But to pull myself right forward to like what changed that, I think I got to a point at work where I was fairly senior, and a young woman started as sort of junior account executive something, and she was gay, and she hadn't mentioned it until she realised I was gay. And it was so palpable for me how relieved like she was, like, to be somewhere where someone senior was gay, and she immediately like was out and would talk about it, and felt, just felt so good about it. And that absolutely showed me how important it was that now that I was at a certain level, that I had to, sort of be a role model and not allow sort of another kind of generation of like young people to come through and feel like they couldn't challenge things like that, or they were in a place that it would be frowned upon if they challenged something like that. And that completely altered everything. And just like Martin said before, the minute that I almost would mention it as soon as I met people from then on in, would mention my wife, my girlfriend, like whatever stage I was at, my girlfriend, like really quickly, because my coping mechanism became like, get it out there early on, and then it's done, you don't need to think about it, 3 meetings in. And that, nobody cared, like no adverse reaction, actually barely like flickers, etc., at points. And so formative in the confidence to actually being confident about it, because once you did it a few times, it just completely changed things. So yeah, I wish I'd done it sort of 5 years before, but I guess you just need to go on the journey of it yourself. Yeah,
I think what's interesting, one of the things that's come out of something you said and that Martin has said, is this, the idea of the microaggressions, the small things which probably nobody would ever pay much attention to if you're not on the receiving end of it. And if we're looking at the reasoning why so many grads especially go back into the closet, is I don't think they're necessarily going back into the closet as such, they're just not outing themselves in the workplace. Yeah. And a lot of it can be because they're testing the safety net of where they actually are. Yes. So these microaggressions are the things that are actually, I would say, really informing people not to be out with themselves. Would you all agree with that?
Yeah, for sure. I think, and you encounter those microaggressions, and sort of Emmy was touching upon like your coping mechanism, and it sounds like, Lee was talking about the coping mechanisms, and hers is about kind of almost outing herself in every conversation straight away, and mine is kind of about almost being overtly homosexual in places where I'm feeling that there's a microaggression present, or something going on, I will start to talk about my favorite music, and it'll be the gayest music you've thought of, or musical theatre, or I'll say how I hate football when I actually quite like football. Like, I'll order a prosecco instead of a beer. Like, I'll project difference as confidence to push that away. So, and then I think that what I also think what comes with microaggressions is why people don't want to maybe be so open about their sexuality at work, because they feel like it will impede their progress. And I think you have to kind of be kind of visible to kind of show that isn't always true, because I'm sure it is to a certain degree. I feel like, you know, there's a lot of unconscious bias training that needs to happen. I think masculine traits are prioritized, and so if, you know, you're projecting some sort of kind of femininity as part of your sexuality, I think we're in this together with, you know, women in the workplace about pushing that agenda. And yeah, so I think it's kind of a radical act to be visibly queer at work, and especially in our industry, actually.
Yeah, I would completely agree, and I still, so now I own a marketing agency. 20% of the people that work for me are actually gay, and so it's no surprise that has happened, and people have actively come to work at our agency because I, you know, I talk about it all the time, as I've just said, whether it's writing about it or doing talks, etc. But I think it is really important for, you know, you can't really expect 21-year-olds to come in, even though I do think 21-year-olds these days do feel like a little bit further on that journey than us, because they've not grown up with Section 28. But however, you can't expect them to come in, and if they can't see at a senior level that support is there, then that's when I think it's so much harder for them to feel comfortable. And so I think it is, you know, it's for senior marketers to do that work, to make sure that you're actively telling people that you want them to be able to bring their whole selves to work. And not only that it's important that contributes to the work itself, that their, you know, their difference actually is the valuable part of the work that they do. Otherwise, it would be a really dull output right across the board.
I would just add to that point as well, Lee, that, you know, my GCSEs were poor in comparison to what I could achieve, but my college was excellent. And I really feel like at work it's the same. Like, if you're spending your mental energy hiding yourself and worrying about that, you're not putting it into, you know, the work. And so it's bad for businesses to, you know, not kind of encourage this openness.
And I think this is a perfect place to bring you in, Sarah, obviously head of people at Good Stuff. You've had lots of experience in looking into this issue and looking into diversity in general, but the thought of creating safe spaces, and how do you go about dealing with this, the fact that when people first walk through your doors, they feel that they can be who they are?
Well, I mean, that's a big question, and I think so. I'll try and answer it in a way that is true for me and my experience, and the experience that I've had through other kind of people that I've worked with and friends that I've worked with. I think just in terms of safe spaces, I found it really interesting, Martin, when you were speaking about your coming out story, and you talked about Lush and the fact that you felt really comfortable there, and they didn't have from what I gather and from what you said, they didn't have a policy on how to make it a safe space. They didn't say, right, we need to do X, Y, and Z. What they had was representation. They had people in there that looked like you for one aspect of who you were. Not every aspect, but one aspect that you were dealing with at the time. And I think that for me is really key. So how do you create a space in which everyone can be represented, and it can be inclusive to all and create that sense of belonging? And it's, like I say, it's a huge question. And I think it's there's not one size fits all and not one right answer. But for me, in my experience, it starts with creating a space in which everybody can speak honestly about everything. So I'm a big believer in bringing your whole self to work, which is what we've spoken about, and authenticity. And I think the only way that you can do that is by being vulnerable and creating trust and emotional availability. And I think through doing that, you can create spaces in which everybody can be represented. That isn't a silver bullet to on your first day, how do you create that? But I think to the points that have come up before, the representation part is key. The visibility part, which I think is slightly different. So we have got at Good Stuff, we've got a recently launched Do the Right Thing Council. So Do the Right Thing is one of our values. We have 6 values at work, and Do the Right Thing is kind of the one that I guess it falls through everything that we do. And that council is made up of 8 areas of diversity, of which our Pride group is probably our most established, and it's been around for the past 3 years. We have an agency lead as well as a partner, a board level lead for that group. And the person running that, the agency lead, has been at Good Stuff for over 5 years, has grown up through the ranks there, and is a gay man. And I think what we have there is visibility for anyone joining the agency who comes from an LGBTQ plus background, who can see a career path for themselves in the role model that he's provided. And that group who does the work for Pride, so we do lots of work internally, and actually we're looking at our strategy for the coming year of what we can do externally, and working more closely with things like advertising, to create real meaningful change, both kind of within and without. And I think through doing those things and having a mixed group from a sexuality perspective, but also from gender and other intersectionalities, I think you start having conversations about things. And through those conversations, you realise very simply that people are people, and that we want everybody to belong. And it seems like the simplest thing in the world. If we can just have those conversations without any sense of recrimination, then for me, that's the start point.
Yeah, great. And Martin, obviously you're a founder of your own business. How are you, other than just being outwardly yourself at work, is there any other things you're putting in place at all?
Well, you know, it's obviously my business is me, myself and I at the moment. I'm a contractor, but I suppose like when I've kind of had kind of small teams previously before kind of doing that, I think it's like what's been talked about before. It's about just being visible and being embracing of difference in whatever form that is as well. So, you know, it can't just be about embracing one sort of difference, which is what you are. It's being very open and available to kind of have those conversations and be able to kind of support anybody, whatever that difference may be. I think it just comes from just listening to people and just like really, I think one of the traits that I have is I'm just curious about people. So I actively like enjoy meeting people that are very different to me, and so I'm not closed down to it. And I think that is a big part of kind of embracing that, is just being really curious about people, enjoying the differences in different people and what that brings to, especially our industry, which is all about ideas. And you touched on it before, JP. You know, it's about those, if we're in the ideas business, you know, this is something we should focus on, as like, this is one of our biggest tools, our people and their differences. So yeah, I just think as well, it's interesting with advertising in terms of kind of, it's, you know, we're kind of a very anti-unionist sort of mindset. And I think some businesses take a view sometimes that, you know, communities of people, like-minded people, it sort of kind of feels like a union and feels like an organization of people for rights. And I think advertising is not kind of familiar with that, doesn't really embrace that as much. So I think that's maybe an interesting tension that needs to be borne out. I know there's a lot of interest online at the moment about creating a union for our industry since COVID, and I think maybe this is part of what they could look at.
Yeah, great. And Emmy, obviously you've been part of many diversity groups in different agencies that you've been at, and obviously been part of Outvertising for a fair few years now as well. What would you say that you've seen happen in the environments where you've been working, which has promoted better inclusion and better visibility, and also making people feel that they can be their authentic place in the workplace? Because you've been quite part of that conversation through the years.
Yeah, so I think I definitely echo what Sarah and David, Sarah, Martin, and you were talking about. Is all about visibility. I think having visible role models at all levels, from execs to up to partners, is definitely key to drive the transformation. I think the most important thing is that we have to always work together, because for us to be able to make the change and make things to happen, it's not just by having one person or two people from the LGBT spectrum pushing the boundaries. We have to always try to get things done for the right. And I think having people from HR are allies number one for us to be able to make things happen. Also, having people from senior leadership actually driving the change is also very important. I have worked in a few agencies here in London, and I think that obviously the level of engagement from senior leadership changes from person to people and from agency to agency, because each individual has their own agenda. But I think as we are now moving into a more diverse war, and I think that because of what happens with Black Lives Matter, that has shaken the war in so many levels, where actually a lot of senior leadership is taking the conversation about diversity and inclusion across all the intersectionality more seriously. So even though there have been a bit of changes, hopefully in the near future things will be better for everybody. And I think the last point that I wanted to make is the power of networks. Having networks in the workplace are so important, so important. It doesn't matter if the organization that you work for is only 5 people. Have your network. I'm sure if the fact that if you don't have an LGBT person working with you, that doesn't mean that in a year's time when your business is growing, you are not going to have a transgender person applying for a job. So it's very important to start creating those safe spaces, even if you don't have people representing the community. And if you are a small business, my recommendation is always try to partner up with groups like Outvertising, like Intercoms, like Intermedia, or with other agency networks for you to collaborate and do things together. So that for me is kind of the main points on keep driving this big topic on D&I at industry level and agencies.
I just want to add to what Emmy said. I think that networks are super important, and actually this network in particular, I suppose when you said JP that, also actually you said this, Emmy, at the beginning, that people go back into the closet, especially young people not talking about their sexuality, and then you've got this horrifying stat that's like 2/3 of people, LGBT people at the moment, suffering like depressive tendencies. And you were talking about, you know, JP the other day, about how, you know, people that are just coming out of uni maybe going back into, they've got entry-level positions in advertising, and then they're going back into homes where they don't feel safe, don't feel open. And this is the kind of place like Outvertising where it's a gateway almost into starting to feel comfortable enough to be open at work and find that safe space at work. And I think if someone can't find a safe space outside of work, then work needs to become that safe space. So businesses need to try and create that safe space and create the ability for people to feel comfortable being themselves at work. It'll be great for businesses, but it's also just crucial for your own mental health, especially right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've been seeing a lot of on a lot of job boards, on job descriptions, a lot of companies seem to be going out of their way to say within the job description that they support a diverse workforce and expect people to do the same. But I remember in my last agency group, because we had a logo for our network, and just having that logo in a starter pack, immediately all the people coming in immediately knew, oh look, there's a rainbow network here. That means that they actually support me. So I think those little things, I think to your point, Sarah, it's a really big question being asked about how do we do this? How do we create safe spaces? And especially the larger the organization, the harder that's going to be, because there's so many different layers of bureaucracy, politics, and everything else that goes in with it. So I think sometimes it can just be those small things like putting a pride sticker on your website, or having your diversity claims kind of like front and center when you're doing recruiting and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. I mean, and that's one of the things. So, we talk about it quite a lot. Policies aren't the most exciting thing in the world, but if you have them sort of published and you share them with people, and it shows your statement of intent around equality and diversity, then automatically, if you are a diverse potential employee, you know that the organisation takes it seriously. So I think things like that are super important. We have various different sort of posters up around our office, including on the loo doors of, and obviously we're not in the office at the moment, but you know, how you can be a mental health ally, how you can be an LGBT ally, and sort of some specific actions there that people who are on the ground and want to help and want to do things that are actionable can absolutely put into practice. So I think there are the kind of the big lofty things, and there isn't, as we said, one size fits all, but there are small things, actions that people can take to support everybody feeling like they belong within a company. I think your point though about the big agencies is a really interesting one, having done big and small, and actually talking to Harry, who leads our Pride work at Good Stuff. He said that it's from him, having done both as well, he felt it was much easier to be himself at a smaller agency coming to Good Stuff that's independent, where you have access to everybody at all levels straight away, and you know, and he was encouraged to bring his whole self to work. So I think seeing that does make a huge difference.
And that's a lovely segue into a question from our audience, which is, what can allies on the ground and not in senior positions do to help their LGBTQ plus colleagues? Put that one to you, Lee.
I mean, I think even it feels like a small thing, but just general language is just so important. You know, I talked before about, you know, constantly people, and still happens all the time, will assume your heterosexuality. And at Wire, we try hard to, so whoever that comes in, that you would never ask questions like, so what does your husband do, or what does your boyfriend do, that you would just wouldn't make those kind of assumptions. And right from the off, be mindful of language and pronouns, and the fact that whoever you're speaking to just might not be straight, because I live in hope that one day it'd be brilliant to not every single day have to correct that kind of stuff. And I know it seems like very small, but actually it's quite a large thing every day in the lives of LGBTQ people. I think the other thing is also the work itself. I think it goes a huge way if you're working on a project and you're casting it, etc., that you're actively thinking about representation within that work of LGBTQ people and beyond, you know, further diversity. I can see that happening so much more now. Again, for years when I worked in the industry, whenever we did anything, even though I'd supported bosses, they would never have thought to make sure that any of the work was representative. And the fact that I think in our organisation we would always do that, no matter, you know, what the client is, we would make sure that goes a long way. I know for the junior members of the team who are LGBTQ, to just seeing that you think their life should be represented right across the board. So yeah, those are two things that I think go a long way.
I wanted to add something. I think something that I have personally learned throughout my journey is about making people feel comfortable. So I think for allies, it's very important for them to educate themselves and understand that what happens in our community, and be aware of the issues that we have. Understand what are the different intersectionalities within the community, because it's important that the role as an ally is to give us safety. It's kind of be like a guardian for the community. So a lot of the time when we hear people doing microaggressions against someone in the community or a different part of the intersection, we have to call these people out, and we have these people to make feel uncomfortable. And that is what a good ally has to do, and is just not be visible, but whenever they hear someone in the T-point making a comment that is completely wrong, or somebody in the lift, it doesn't matter if it's the owner of the company or the receptionist, call them out. And you don't have, you know, like, we don't have to be rude when calling out people, but we can just be here and really make people understand what they are saying is completely wrong, and maybe teach them. You know, we don't have to be aggressive when calling out and making people feel uncomfortable, but we have to keep doing more of that.
I mean, that's a really good point. I mean, it's so powerful when someone that isn't an LGBTQ but is an ally actually calls somebody out on a microaggression, rather than you having to do it yourself. And I would also add, I mean, we, you know, we don't have the transgender like perspective, so much in this conversation, but you know, I'm big on kind of like putting kind of your gender pronouns in Slack at the moment and on your email, because it just shows that, you know, you have empathy for trans people, and it's you're a safe person for a trans person to be themselves with.
Yeah.
And also, like, our digital, you know, I'm on Slack all the time. Your face at the moment is your Slack like name, so putting it on there is actually quite a big deal right now, because, you know, this is all we see of each other, and people's anxiety is massively inflated because of lockdown. So I think just being able to kind of be open and kind of safe to people on channels like that is really, really invaluable at the moment.
Yeah, it's a really good point, and it's something we talk about a lot in advertising, is the power of the ally, which is why it's just so important, so great that Sarah, you're here as a true ally to the community, because your voice is so powerful in helping us, because it is like, well, of course you're going to say that you're part of the community. Where an ally says it, it is like, oh, this is something I actually need to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm.
I think, so the question about what you can do as an ally, I think we've answered it really, really well. But there's one thing that just came up, is the ally posters that were pulled together that were done so by someone in the Pride team who isn't part of the LGBT community, but is a passionate ally. And it was done through research, through talking to people. So, you know, if you don't have an ally poster in your agency, what's to stop you from doing one? Go and do some research, ask some questions, and I'm sure that people would be incredibly grateful, but also would learn something through it. I think the education point that Emmy made is really important. You know, if you're not experiencing that and you're not in the shoes of somebody from the community, how can you learn what it might be like? What can you do to educate yourself? And I think it's a really great way of doing it. So you kind of get the allyship work out there, but you're also self-educating, which I think is really important.
Fantastic. Kind of an obvious question, so to speak, but to my LGBTQ colleagues up here, if you could go back to your younger self when you were fearful and tell yourself something, what would it be?
I mean, I guess I would go back during watching that Bad Girls episode and just go, right, this is it now, just go forward, be yourself. Because I think one thing that is a real shame, even hearing Martin speak to today, and Emmy too, although you had a slightly different experience from us, you, by not being out in those teenage years, I think we lost such a lot of stuff, you know. Like, I think you lose such a lot of the sort of formative part of like coming of age by being closeted in those years. And I absolutely would love to go back and tell myself that actually, you know, this is all going to be fine, and just get to know yourself now. And it would have just speeded so many things up along the way for all of us, I'm sure.
Cool.
I think I would tell myself it's okay that you don't fancy Kylie Minogue like that.
and I would have just been the opposite. You would have been having the same conversation the other way around.
But yeah, I mean, seriously, I now look back and I think the process of coming out and feeling unsafe and, you know, making peace with your identity and bringing it into the forefront, doing that really early on actually was really formative and really important, and it's really helped me to be like who I am today. And I feel like that's almost a bit of I try and frame it as a positive, and something that, you know, I was lucky to have early on. And some people, you know, don't ever really kind of look inward at themselves and really make peace with that until much later, because, you know, they can sort of fit into a heteronormative society. I think when you are like 100% gay, it's kind of like you need to work it out. I think, yeah, I would just kind of say it's okay. You'll be fine.
Amy?
I think I would be throwing rainbows all over the place, you know. I think, I mean, I was born gay. I didn't go through any sort of like actual transformation to find myself. But I definitely wish when I was 15, probably would have had that conversation earlier on with my family, and being able to really be what I am since early ages without any fears of what were my teachers thinking of me, or people at school, or what were the neighbors talking about, because I always have those whisperers and those saboteur voices going around, and that was what was making me oh my god, I can't speak English. That was the thing that was making me scared back then. And hearing all of these voices disturbing my personal development. But I think it's fine. I think all of those kids who are in high school, who are just starting their new careers, they just have to go away from all of these external voices who are limiting what they actually are, and just go away. What is the worst thing that could happen? No one is going to sack you from your work for being gay. No one is going to stop you from progressing your career for being a transgender person. It's all safe. And we have a bunch of lots of people like us and every single person on this call ready for us to, when we fall, they're going to help us, they're going to lift us up. So it's absolutely fine to be LGBT.
Great. Got another question from the audience. I find at times, despite my best effort, that I slip into gendered language when I'm talking to about and thinking about non-binary folks. What can I do to stop this from happening? Is it just a case of practice makes perfect?
I think I'd say that we all slip and do that.
Yeah.
And it's about your intentions, and it's about trying to catch yourself and being honest with that and working to make people feel more comfortable. But yeah, we all do that. I mean, I still say guys a lot, referencing kind of people, and like, you know, that's a hard one to stop. But yeah, I'm definitely trying to remove it from all my emails, that kind of thing. So it's just a process.
Yeah. And I think also asking questions, because I think especially for the transgender umbrella and all the different communities within the trans can create a lot of confusion, even for people within the community. So whenever we are not clear with what pronouns we should be using, how we should be referring to this person, ask questions. That is the best way for us to educate ourselves. Ask questions. That doesn't harm.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think education is the key to start with. Definitely learn why we use different pronouns and such. There's plenty of training out there that you can have a look at. But to everyone's human. Everyone does slip up. Everybody does make a boo-boo every now and then, and you can't kick yourself about it. You just have to take it as a learning experience and move onwards with it.
Yeah.
And I think an interesting point you were almost came on to, Emmy, was that the younger generation that are coming up underneath us are much more likely to not identify as heterosexual and not identify with a gender. So I think this is why it's massively important that us older generations start getting all our ducks in a row now, because at some point we're going to be employing them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And listen to them too, because they have a different experience from the one that we had, just like the generation before us had a different experience from us. And just really listening to what they have to say, and there'll be things that we're going to have to adapt in our understanding too, which I know feels like, there's this different sense for people of like, oh, well, we've not even reached full sort of equality, or we've not reached a point where everyone understands our point of view, but like it's moving like actually maybe a little bit more quickly now, and I think it is just about like listening and going with that and hearing what they've got to say.
Great. The generational point is really interesting as well, because I think that sexuality of age and the different generations that we're going to have in the workforce in the next sort of 10, 15 years, it's huge, and there's a lot of disparity in experience between that. So I think we keep coming back to it, but listening and educating piece is so important. And there are ways that you can do it, whether that's through reverse mentoring, whether it's having kind of listening spaces where you talk openly together and consult together. But yeah, I think the generation part is about being open to it, recognizing that it's happening, and then learning together and from each other.
Mm-hmm.
And just on that as well, like just to kind of highlight how big a difference there is. Like, my sister is 6 years younger than me, went to the same school as me, but I didn't know anybody that was gay at school. When she was at school, though, 2 of her friends were gay and they were going out with each other openly at school. I mean, that's just 6 years. Things are changing fast.
I think if we can try and wrap this up a little now, seeing as this is all about National Coming Out Day, if you were to say one thing to somebody that sat at home in a virtual office, who's thinking, should I just do it? Should I come out? What would be a piece of advice you would give them? Just throwing you on the spot, that.
Yeah.
I mean, just pick a person that you feel really safe with, and go for it. Treat it like, you know, it's just one person. It's just an experiment. I'm just going to see how this goes, and you'll find that very soon it will be addictive to come out. If one person it'll just the freeing feeling of it is a drug, and you will find that you're out to everyone before you know it. That's how I felt anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's advice. Such a lot of it is about just saying those words the first couple of times, the first few times. I've never known anyone who's told me that it didn't then feel better after that point, after they'd done it a few times. You know, and so I think that's good advice. Find the first person that you know is going to be safest space first, and take it from there.
Emmy, anything to add?
I was thinking about maybe, talking to a stranger. Why not trying to a person who doesn't know you, who does not have any clue about who you are? Probably is going to be less of a judgment, because if he doesn't know you, probably would be listening and might be coming out with some interesting talk. So maybe why not going to Starbucks, having a coffee, and tell the person next to you, actually, I'm gay, and see what happens. Yeah, great.
Can I add to that? I know I obviously can't talk about coming out because it's not something that I've done, but what I was going to say is, if someone is watching this and thinking about it, just know that everybody on this call accepts you and rates who you are. And so, to the stranger point, if you don't feel like there's anyone that you can come out to, reach out to anybody on here, and you will have somebody that will accept you for who you are.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, that's great, Sarah. That's true.
Yes. So thank you all very much for joining in today's roundtable. It's been really interesting, some great insights, great hearing different backgrounds and the experiences working together and the differences between them as well. And thank you very much, Sarah, for coming in as a straight ally and talking about what you're doing and how offices and businesses can actually help their employees feel that they can come out and they can be their authentic self in the workplace. So thank you very much for the work you're doing. If anybody does want any more information, or if they do want to reach out to anybody, then as Sarah said, reach out to anybody here. But please do contact Outvertising if you'd like role model training, ally training, or if you just want to chat. On that basis, we do have a online social tonight, which we will drop something on our social feeds about a bit later on. It'll be Zoom with wine. So if somebody does just want to come and have a chat about advertising, about Outvertising, or just about life in general, then please do pop along and join us this evening. And on that, I'd just like to say thank you all once again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys.
Bye.
Thank you. Have a nice rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.